Chapter 4: A Missing Piece and a Hard Choice. The days leading up to the Ancient Wonders presentation flew by in a blur of cardboard, glue, and glitter. Mina and Chloe's mausoleum project was coming along magnificently. Its miniature walls rose tall and straight, detailed with tiny pillars and carvings. Chloe's eye for design was a perfect contrast to Mina's careful research. They felt a deep sense of pride in what they were creating. One afternoon, as they were putting the finishing touches on their model at Mina's house, a small yet vital piece went missing: the delicate, hand-drawn blueprint for the mausoleum's roof. Mina had spent hours researching its exact design, and it was crucial for their final construction. "It was right here," Mina said, her voice rising with a touch of nerves. "I specifically left it under this book." They searched everywhere, under papers, in backpacks, on the floor. The blueprint was simply gone. Mina felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Without it, they'd have to start that part of the model from square one, and there was hardly any time left. It felt like a small catastrophe. Across town, Tiffany Miller and Kyle Johnson were huddled over their own project, which looked less like a wonder and more like a collection of bent straws. Their earlier attempt at the Colossus had been a crumpled mess, and their paper airplane contest had eaten up precious time. Tiffany elected to do the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, but that seemed like the most difficult one in retrospect. However, Tiffany, with a subtle smirk, pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. It was Mina's blueprint. Her initial desire to simply make her own project look less bad had evolved into a small act of mischief. Kyle, looking nervous, just kept quiet. He wasn't usually so devious, but Tiffany's influence could be strong. The next morning at school, Mina and Chloe looked tired but determined. They had stayed up late, trying to recreate the blueprint from memory. Mr. Harrison noticed their strained faces. He had a way of observing, without being obvious, a deep understanding of his students. He noticed Tiffany and Kyle looking unusually quiet, exchanging nervous glances. Later that day, a crumpled piece of paper was found near the recycling bin. It was Mina's blueprint, folded tightly, as if someone had tried to hide it. Mina and Chloe looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. Mr. Harrison called Mina, Chloe, Tiffany, and Kyle into his office. He laid the crumpled blueprint on his desk. "Mina, Chloe, is this yours?" he asked calmly. Mina nodded. "Yes, Mr. Harrison. It went missing yesterday." Mr. Harrison then turned his gaze to Tiffany and Kyle. He didn't yell or accuse. He simply looked at them with a patient yet knowing expression. Kyle fidgeted, but Tiffany met his gaze, though her usual confidence seemed to vanish, and she looked down in a clear admission of guilt and surprise. After class, Mr. Harrison laid out the situation: the missing blueprint, the wasted time, and the discovery caused the group a tremendous amount of stress. He didn't have to say the word sabotage for everyone to understand. He then turned to Mina and Chloe. "This was wrong," he stated, his voice firm. "What do you think should happen? Should they get an automatic F? You have every right to feel upset." He was giving them a difficult choice: push for punishment or show leniency. Mina and Chloe exchanged a long glance. Mina remembered her own frustration, the feeling of a small but important setback, but she also thought about Tiffany's constant need to impress others and Kyle's usual easygoing nature. Was this truly coming from a place of meanness or from fear? It was a complex enigma of emotions. After a quiet moment, Mina took a deep breath. "Mr. Harrison," she began, "it was really hard to lose our blueprint, and it made us feel bad." Chloe nodded in agreement. "But we think they should still get to present their project. Maybe they learned something just from having to deal with this. We really don't want them to get into too much trouble." Mina looked at Chloe, who offered a small, supportive smile. Mr. Harrison looked surprised, then a quiet admiration shone in his eyes. "That's a very mature and forgiving choice. Mina, Chloe," he said. He then turned to Tiffany and Kyle, his voice serious. "Your actions were unacceptable. You will still complete and present your project, but you will also write a letter of apology to Mina and Chloe, explaining what you did and why it was wrong. You will also receive an automatic grade, mark it down." He emphasized that building trust was harder than tearing it down, just like the ancient wonders themselves. This seemed to really make sense to the guilty couple. Tiffany and Kyle looked surprised, then relieved. They nodded, avoiding Mina and Chloe's eyes. It was a tough situation, but Mina felt a quiet strength in their decision. They had shown empathy, choosing understanding over anger. Mr. Harrison gathered the crumpled blueprint and handed it back to Mina. "Very well," he said, looking at all 4 students. "Now, off to your next class." As Mina and Chloe turned to leave, Chloe hesitated. She glanced at Mina, then back at Tiffany and Kyle, who were still standing a bit awkwardly. "Mr. Harrison," Chloe said, her voice a little softer than usual, "since they had to restart their project and it's due soon, is it okay if we help them?" Mina's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected Chloe to suggest that out loud, but as she thought about it, it felt right. She nodded in agreement. Mr. Harrison was clearly caught off guard. He actually blinked a couple of times, a rare sight. He looked genuinely astonished, his usual calm expression replaced by surprise. "Help them?" he repeated, a hint of wonder in his voice. "You mean after what happened?" Tiffany and Kyle stood frozen, their mouths slightly open. Their eyes were wide, blinking in disbelief. They looked absolutely shocked. They probably expected anger, maybe even laughter, but certainly not an offer of help. They didn't even know how to respond. A complete enigma of emotions crossing their faces. Mr. Harrison quickly recovered, a small, approving smile replacing his surprise. "Well," he said, "that's certainly an unexpected offer. It's their project, of course, so the choice is theirs to accept help." He emphasized this was their decision, not something he would force. Tiffany looked at Kyle, then back at Mina and Chloe. A flicker of something that wasn't anger, maybe embarrassment, maybe even gratitude, crossed her face. Kyle just nodded quickly. "Yes," Kyle managed to say, his voice a little small. "Yes, please. We really messed up. We could really use all the help we can get." And so, later that day, instead of going home, Mina and Chloe found themselves at Tiffany's house. The living room was a small disaster of art supplies and crumpled paper. Tiffany's early attempts at the Colossus model lay in pieces. It was clear they were significantly behind schedule. Mina and Chloe didn't say, "I told you so." They just started looking at the scattered materials. Mina quickly assessed the situation, her smart mind already planning. "Okay, let's see what you've got," she said, already sketching ideas on a fresh piece of paper. They even used small plastic trees from her younger brother's collection of his Lego set. In fact, They even used many of those exact Legos to build certain parts that needed a solid foundation. Amazingly, despite the rocky start, the four of them began to work together. Tiffany, who usually focused on being popular, showed a surprisingly good eye for detail when it came to tiny decorations. Kyle, who often just tried to be funny, was actually quite good with his hands. Mina, with her deep research, helped them find a simpler yet still magnificent way to represent their chosen wonder. Chloe's quiet design skills also made a big difference. Working as a team, Mina and Chloe realized that Tiffany and Kyle weren't entirely bad. Their actions came from a shallow place, from the fear of failing and the desire to impress others, but they weren't completely without good qualities. By working together, they began to understand each other a little better, breaking down some of the invisible walls between them. And in a wonderful twist, it was Tiffany, surprisingly, who helped Mina and Chloe finish their mausoleum model. They were having trouble getting the perfect angle for the small, delicate roof, and Tiffany, with her eye for aesthetics, quickly suggested a simple change to the wooden pieces that made it all fit together perfectly. Wow, Mina breathed, genuinely impressed. How did you see that? Tiffany just gave a small look of approval. It was a moment of unexpected collaboration and understanding, a huge contrast to their earlier conflict.